In all your work so far, you've been using relational thinking. And now it's time to bring it all together. Once again, we've talked about letters becoming words and words becoming sentences and sentences becoming whole thoughts. If we think of music, we think of notes and chords and a body of work that becomes a symphony. That's where you are now, the symphony. The literature, the art of understanding any given being by organizing the constellation of their charts around them. So it's not just the one entity or two entities, it's the constellation, it's the groups that we're interested in now. And the only way to do that effectively and ethically is by placing them all around the numerologist and the person asking, and to use the relational thinking, the relational exercises. So every chart should be done, all the calculations should be done, just like all the notes should be done for a piece of music. But when you're looking at a symphony and the entire orchestra is at play, and there's a conductor, you, the numerologist, the audience, the person asking, it all has to be taken into account at once. There's no more time or room left to be looking at the minuscule details, and yet they need to be done. So let's assume that all these charts have been done and they've all been placed around. Now, what is the opportunity? If we're looking at a business, a corporation, who's asking? Is it the head of a team looking at a team in the context of a department, in the context of a project? Is it the board of directors looking at a chairperson or a potential hiring? Is it somebody examining the company as a whole and perhaps a direction it's taking? Each of these, of course, are different modes, different opportunities, different kinds of constellations, and yet the concept remains the same. Each chart has to be done, the numerologist, the person asking, an understanding of which players are involved. And then with your relational thinking, you begin to see some of the patterns emerging and can address whatever question comes up. Now the same thing applies when you're looking at our essence of a country, of a nation, of an incorporated body that's not a corporation, but a group of beings, a country. So when you look at a country, you have the same thing. Are we looking at the head of state? Are we looking at the country itself? Are we examining a cabinet? Are we examining a particular project? Opposing forces? This will depend on how that constellation is played out. There is no one rule for how it's done because it depends on each situation, on each question. This is where relational thinking pays off. When you're looking at a constellation that has no start, in other words, a family tree, once again, what are the opportunities? Are we looking at a marriage and all the in-laws on all sides? Are we looking at children and what their relationships are with each other and how best to approach education? Are we looking at several different relationships in order to understand communication? Are we looking at a problem or a breakdown in communication? Or are we simply curious about a family tree? That constellation will change, but again, in this case, since there is no central birthday, all the birthdays matter even more, but the constellation is still the same. It's relational thinking, observing patterns. And of course you have the global. The global is the most interesting because in this one there really is no start, there is no finish, there is no one particular entity. There's just the largest entity possible. And for this, of course, like all the others, the cycle is so very meaningful. In this part of your process, in this part of your learning, and now in this part of your professionalism, practice and practice and practice and practice. Don't try to get the single pieces of information together. You will need those. Just put them around a central question and experiment with that until you begin to see these patterns emerge even more and can address a certain type of question within a much larger entity.